I'll show you how to speak with confidence. We're going to borrow the communication behaviors of those naturally confident people out there, and we're going to practice those same skills. Here are 3 nonverbal and 3 verbal tips. Picture that you're speaking at a group meeting because that's usually where communicators need a boost. The first nonverbal tip is to speak at a slightly louder volume. Confident individuals speak up. They don't mumble. They don't let their volume trail off at the end of sentences. My best estimate for speakers who don't yet seem to speak with confidence is they need to increase their volume by approximately 25 or maybe even 50% in some cases. When I work with clients and my college students, I've done this exercise hundreds of times over the years. I'll take a speaker who is not yet projecting confidence, and I have them redo a 30-second portion of a message. With each repetition, I ask them to boost their volume a little bit. And you can try this too. If you picture an old-fashioned volume knob on a radio or a sound system in your car, the volume knob is for their voice, and it's usually set at about 4 or 5 when they start. I ask them to work their way up to speak at a level 6 or 7, and the impact is immediate. Everybody in the room notices the difference right away. People instantly sound more confident when they speak a little louder. Now, I'm not talking about yelling. I'm not talking about speaking at 9 or 10. Just turn your vocal volume knob up from around 4 or 5 to 6 or 7. The second tip is to make direct and comfortable eye contact. In most cases, when we talk about eye contact, we talk about it as a way to connect with other people, and that's obviously true. But eye contact is also exactly what naturally confident communicators do. Everybody around you will interpret solid eye contact as self-confidence. So when you speak, keep your chin up. Don't look down at your desk or at the computer in front of you. Look people directly in the eyes when you're speaking. And when you finish your talking turn, keep your eyes and your chin up and look at whoever speaks next with direct and comfortable eye contact. That'll show that you believe in what you just said. Now, I'm not talking about staring. I'm not suggesting you use your eye contact to try to intimidate people. But direct and comfortable eye contact will help you stand out because most people in group meetings usually look down at their computers or the table. The third tip to communicate with confidence and composure is through controlling potentially distracting nonverbal cues. On the plus side, composure typically looks like a relaxed facial expression and an easy smile. Confident and composed people gesture naturally with their hands. On the negative side, there are some distracting nonverbal cues that you want to avoid. As author Alan Weiner said in his book, The High Flyer Handbook, high-status executives often come across as confident because they demonstrate a degree of self-control over their nonverbal cues. In other words, you don't want to do anything that makes you look anxious. That could be tapping your pen repeatedly on the table, bouncing your leg up and down, or swiveling in your chair a lot. It could be fidgeting with your hands, touching your nose, face, or hair. Now, the good news is it's very unlikely that you do more than 1 or 2 of these routinely. Most individuals have just a couple of obvious distracting behaviors that they need to eliminate. But if nothing comes to mind for you yet, then at your next group meeting, notice if you're doing any distracting nonverbals when you feel anxious. And if you work with someone that you trust a lot, ask them to take notice of anything nonverbal that could be hurting your credibility. I was working with a client and she was tapping her pen on the table like crazy as we were practicing an important update she was preparing to give to her leadership team. We got her to stop tapping the pen, but her nervous energy went down to her leg, and that started bouncing up and down more like she was hooked up to a lie detector test. We had to chase down just a few small behaviors like this, but once she eliminated those distracting nonverbals, she naturally looked more confident and composed as a result. And those are the 3 nonverbal tips. Before we get to the verbal tips, I'd like to recommend an entire free mini course I posted on YouTube a while back. It's called How to Communicate Clearly and Concisely. If you like this video here, you're going to love that one. And if you want to take a look at my website, there's an entire free page of resources for you. I'll put links to those both in the description below the video. The first verbal tip to speak with more confidence is to speak in concise sentences with a pause in between them. The idea is nervous and anxious people typically ramble and they get long-winded. They string everything together in one long run-on sentence. But confident people speak directly. Now, I understand that you may not feel like the most naturally concise communicator. That probably means you'll have to figure out what you want to say in advance and then communicate that in bottom line fashion. That may mean a little preparation, perhaps some mental practice. But this is what the naturally confident communicators do. They rehearse their message a little bit, at least in their head. They compress what they want to say down to its essence, and then they speak. And the good news is, in a group situation, you may have the agenda in advance. You may even know the piece of the meeting that you will be responsible for communicating. And if that's the case, then talk through your message a couple of times beforehand and sharpen it. Eliminate any redundancies, any extra words. That'll sound like confidence. And for an extra dose of confidence, you want to add little pauses after each sentence. I've talked about this illustration in other videos. Now, you wouldn't necessarily be using PowerPoint slides, but a confident rhythm should sound a bit like you're talking through a PowerPoint slide. So here's how it would sound. You explain a bullet point in one concise sentence and pause. Talk through the next bullet and pause. I'm demonstrating this auditory pattern right now. That's the rhythm naturally confident people have. Those little pauses at the end of each sentence create a confident, punctuated sound. In contrast, when your sentences are all strung together, you are much more likely to sound long-winded and anxious. Tip number 5 is to avoid common disfluencies like restarts, fillers, and tag questions. Anxious communicators do all three of these, so you want to eliminate them to develop a smoother style. Restarts are one of the most common disfluencies. This happens when we begin a sentence or a phrase, and then we literally repeat that phrase or restart that sentence. And it sounds like this. I have an update on a couple of projects I'd like to tell you about. In that example, I restarted my sentence and then I restarted a phrase in the middle of it. This is a very common habit. If I said the sentence without any restarts, it would be, I have an update on a couple of projects I'd like to tell you about. That obviously sounds much smoother. Another common disfluency is the use of too many filler words. Many speakers struggle with saying and, you know, so, like, and any other utterances that offer no additional information or value. This makes speakers sound hesitant. Many people double up on their fillers and say or and that makes them stand out even more. But I'm not suggesting you eliminate every filler word. Just work on reducing them. As a rule of thumb, if you're using a filler word every 2 or 3 sentences, no one will even notice. It won't be a distraction. That's just human. But if you're using a filler every sentence, sometimes 2 fillers a sentence, that will undermine your confident sound. Now, both fillers and restarts are very difficult to eliminate, but it can be done with persistence and patience. I have an entire video on getting rid of fillers that has helped a lot of people. I'll put a link to that in the description below this video. The last verbal habit to avoid is adding tag questions after communicating your point of view. This is the right direction, isn't it? It's time to move forward, don't you think? Granted, there's a time and a place for asking thoughtful questions, but a habit of asking tag questions literally invites listeners to doubt what we say. Each of these statements would obviously sound more confident. We just eliminated the tag questions at the end. This is the right direction. It's time to move forward. And number 6, speak at a moderate pace to articulate your words clearly. Not too fast, not too slow. And I'm calling this a verbal tip because when we speak too quickly, we might blur or blend our words together. That creates a muddled sound rather than a confident sound, an articulate sound. And by the way, most people in videos speak a little more quickly than they would face-to-face. I know I do because the expectations for face-to-face conversations are for listeners in the room. That's very different than watching a video where you're likely to see lots of quick edits and ramped up energy to keep people's attention. The point is, don't use the pace of videos as a guide for how quickly you should speak face-to-face. Don't race through your message. On the other hand, if we speak too slowly, that can sound hesitant or overly cautious. We don't want to sound like we're either rushing or dragging. A moderate pace is the sound of confidence, composure, and credibility. Here's a summary of the 6 tips. I recommend you pick your top 1 or 2 based upon any feedback that you've received about how you communicate and put them into practice as soon as possible. Practice is the way to eliminate bad habits and replace them with new habits. As mentioned, I have an entire free YouTube class on how to communicate clearly and confidently, and another video on how to reduce your filler words. I imagine some of those videos will pop up here on this end screen, but I will put links to all of them in the description below this video, as well as a link to my website, which is chock full of free resources. Until next time, thanks, God bless, and I will see you soon.